Okay, I admit it, I'm bored. More Apollo nonsense with our favourite numpties. So we'll listen to this.
Aircraft as well, I've had cases where they've stolen aircraft, the inspiration for the Firefox film, with Clint Eastwood. But the thing about the Apollo capsules coming backwards, they're coming back at like 25,000 miles per hour, backwards. They don't have a steering wheel, and somehow they always land.
Have you ever heard anything quite so ridiculous? They don't have a steering wheel. They actually do have a control. They do have a control stick, a sort of hand grip thing in the command module. But you wouldn't be manually flying a spacecraft at 25,000 miles an hour. It's more for manoeuvring and docking and all that sort of stuff. Doesn't have a steering wheel. Okay.
Within about 4 miles of the aircraft carrier in the Pacific. And according to the book One Small Step by the German author, is that all the previous Gemini and similar missions, they always landed way off course. I mean, even the Russians have landed off course when they've returned to Earth. Some of them...
Apollo missions, of course, were far more advanced spacecraft, later development, better technology. So the fact that they could actually... What they don't seem to understand is that it's a computer-controlled re-entry. They're not backing a vehicle into the atmosphere at 25,000 miles an hour manually. I mean, these people have got no idea. It's a computer-controlled trajectory. This is all lined up. This is all lined up well before they get anywhere near the atmosphere.
Ended up in China as well. And yet the Apollo missions coming backwards, they can't see out the window. They somehow managed to backflip and
where does the back flipping come in to this? They come in backwards to present the heat shield to the atmosphere. They slow. They come through the atmosphere. The parachutes are deployed, from the apex of the cone, if you like, of the spacecraft. They float to Earth. There's no back flipping involved, is there? Unless he's talking about the way it backflips to present the heat shield to the atmosphere. Yeah, it's all computer controlled, Neil. It's all a computer controlled flight path.
And land right slap bang next to the aircraft carrier. I mean, that's the equivalent of me being blindfolded, holding a dart, throwing it over my shoulder, and hitting a bullseye every time, 6 times. Really?
Well, no, it isn't. Not unless your dart has a computer controlled trajectory. It's all calculated to the nth degree. It's nothing like that. It shows you how little understanding these people have of the technology in general. It's nothing like throwing a dart blindfolded over your shoulder. It's nonsense.
Really? I just want, again, the lack of Apollo.
There's a documentary about Tim Peake about his mission up into the International Space Station. He came back on a Soyuz capsule, and so they land on land, but they usually there's
Dr. Strangelove there as well, special guest appearance. Mein Führer!
quite a lot. These helicopters needed to go and pick them up because they come down in a remote part of Kazakhstan, near the Cosmodrome, near the space center there. But it's usually quite a long helicopter flight because they can't hit it on the nose every time. It's usually like about...
How does he know it's quite a long helicopter flight? Maybe you could let us know in the comments, Ben. How do you know it's usually quite a long helicopter flight?
I think it's like 100 square mile margin of error or something like that. Marcus, you probably know more about that.
Yeah. Well, the moving spacecraft to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, especially coming back from lunar orbit, as you say, they are entering the Earth's atmosphere, which is only 30, 40 miles up by the time they hit.
Actually, no, they hit the atmosphere at 113 miles up.
Hit the atmosphere. They have
600,000 feet is where they actually interface with the atmosphere. Again, it's all computer control.
to enter it at 6.5 degrees to the surface of the Earth, so that they will come in and they will burn off the heat, or burn off the speed with the heat, and it produces an enormous amount of heat.
Of course, he would know exactly how much heat they produce. Yeah, okay. So again, it's all full of errors. It's all nonsense. There was another bit I wanted to show you actually. Oh, there's one bit I can't find it, but I don't know even whether it was in this video, but they've got a little bit of footage of Al Bean, and he's saying he doesn't know whether they went through the. He said, "Oh, I don't think we went far enough out to go through the Van Allen radiation belts." Now, and they think, aha, there you go. So they didn't leave Earth orbit because they didn't go through the Van Allen radiation belts. But what that tells me is that it was such the Van Allen radiation belts was such an insignificant issue compared with the other risks they were taking on the mission, as stated by Van Allen himself. It wasn't even discussed with the astronauts. That's why he doesn't know where the Van Allen belts were, or whether they went far enough out to go through the Van Allen belts, because they never discussed it. If they discussed it, they would have showed him a diagram, and he would have known he'd gone through the edge of it. That's how I read that. But they, well, he didn't go through the Van Allen belts. Oh, it's all fake, and it's ludicrous. It really is ludicrous. Now, there is another comment that I think Marcus Allen makes that I think is quite interesting. I'll just see if I can find that. Actually, I should have let that just continue on a bit. This is a bit I think is quite interesting.
The first nation to actually do a return from lunar orbit was the Soviet Union, with, I think it was Luna 15. Is it Luna 15?
Yeah.
No, it was Zone 5, that's right, Zone 5,
Yeah,
where
Zone
they returned
5,
these animals and blood bags. That was...
Yes, that's right. They orbited two tortoises and some worms around the moon, the Russians, Zone 5. They were trying to claw back some of the prestige, for the Russian space program, because they knew they were lagging so significantly behind the Americans. And actually, the Americans got to Zone 5 before the Russians did, and they were quite impressed that the Russian technology was much further behind the American technology when they had a look at it. But the point I was going to make was that Marcus Allen has just said that Zone 5 Russian spacecraft orbited a couple of animals. He didn't actually say they were tortoises, but they were tortoises. But if the Van Allen radiation belts are so deadly, Mr. Allen, how come the tortoises were completely unharmed? Perhaps you could let us know in the comments below why the tortoises were not fried by this deadly radiation you keep telling us all about. And this skip trajectory stuff is all nonsense as well. Apollo didn't do anything like that. It was all, as I said before, previously it was a computer-controlled trajectory, and it was all quite precise and quite accurate. Again, more nonsense from these people. I should have let that play on just a little bit. This is quite amusing.
8 was much later than that. Was later than that.
So he's saying Apollo 8 was much later than Zond 5. The Russians orbited the tortoises around the moon with Zond 5. Apollo 8 orbiting the astronauts was much later than that. Marcus Allen has just said that. Not the Freudian slip from Marcus Allen. He knows Apollo 8 orbited the moon. It's obviously gone through the Van Allen radiation belts, isn't it?
So they had to try to work out how to get the spacecraft back from lunar orbit. The spacecraft don't have brakes.
They have retro rockets.
You say they don't have steering wheels either. So
and they have manoeuvring thrusters.
It's basically hit and miss. Are they going to get the right app?
Pitch your roll. Manoeuvring thrusters is basically hit and miss. Certainly not hit and miss. Absolute rubbish. It's all precisely calculated, computer-controlled trajectory. The computer controls the thrusters, the manoeuvring thrusters, to line the spacecraft up precisely.
Angle. Skip re-entry. That's what I'm talking about.
That's it, yeah.
If skip re-entry is done properly, yes, it will reduce the speed to the point where it can be controlled much better than just a straight. Now, Apollo didn't.
Now, of course, the publisher of a kiddie comic is going to know all about spacecraft re-entering the Earth's atmosphere.
Do skip re-entry. They couldn't handle it. They couldn't. They didn't have the technology to deal with it.
Absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. I wonder if you could back that up with some evidence. Because all the evidence out there, and it is overwhelming, shows that they did have the technology to do it. Everything you want to know, all the information you need is out there.
So all Apollo craft came back with direct entry, sat straight into the atmosphere, slow down, parachutes out, into the sea, collected big heroes.
It's called technology. He really thinks they whipped round the moon, pointed at Earth, and then took pot luck on whether they'd be able to re-enter into a 6-degree a 6-degree window. Yeah, he really has got no idea, this guy.
Now, whether that's correct or not, or whether they just dropped out of an aircraft 5 or 6 miles up, because you wouldn't actually see an aircraft at 5 miles up.
Yeah, expert on aeronautics as well, obviously. Most airliners fly at 5 or 6 miles up, and you normally can see, you can certainly see the contrails. If they're 5 or 6 miles up, the exhaust from the engines is hot enough to produce contrails. So you would see the condensation trails. He's going to say chemtrails, but they're condensation trails. You'd certainly see those. And if you look, you can usually see the little dot that's producing the contrails. As most airliners fly at 5 or 6 miles high. So again, he's talking out of his backside. Absolute nonsense.
It's what, 30, 40,000 feet up? It's like trying to see somebody on the top of Mount Everest. That's 30,000 feet. Highly unlikely you will.
Yeah, absolutely no idea, this guy. Absolutely no idea. Yeah, just take a look up into the sky. See airliners all the time. Contrails. I driving around in the bush, see contrails all the time. Those planes are 5 or 6 miles high. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I'll leave it there. But let's see if there's any other humorous clips.